Right, this video, iPet Goat 2, it shows the fall of America. iPet Goat 2 literally refers to the sequel to 9/11, because on 9/11, when the towers were falling, or when the planes were hitting the towers, George Bush, the president at that time, was sitting in a classroom and they were reading a story called
The Pet Go. Yes, the Pet Go. Fingers on the...
So when you see a video which was created by someone, I know it's a cartoon, but somebody created this, right? Just because it's a cartoon doesn't mean anything. It is a depiction of the agenda, what they are planning to do, and it goes all the way up to the Antichrist coming out. But it is a tool of deception, this video, because they want you to think it is a prophetic video, but in reality it's just showing their plan. There is collusion on a grand scale that many are unaware of. You know, it's much worse than Republicans and Democrats are just two birds, or two wings of the same bird, and you know, they're all kicking back behind the scenes and are friends with each other. It's a lot higher up than that. I mean, this goes from the leaders of countries seem like they're against one another, but in reality they're in cahoots with one another. And you can see this just common sense. I mean, look back at the COVID situation with all the lockdowns, how the statistics were just blown way out of proportion, how there was so much false information tied to that, the censorship where people couldn't spread truth about what was going on, lockdowns. And that just wasn't in America. That was in China, that was overseas, and almost every country that you hear about often, there were lockdowns behind a falsified narrative, a overblown, intentionally hyped, agenda-driven narrative. And that shows you that there is collusion. There is a plan that is not based upon facts. So they were all in on that, and now they're all in on this, even though they still act like, you know, they're at odds with one another. Yeah, people don't want to believe that though, but time will tell. But hey, this video shows the closing of the Strait of Hormuz. Not only does it show the fall of America and, you know, the concentration camps, where the USA is already building concentration camps over here. Not only does it show that, but it shows the closing of the Strait of Hormuz. There's a YouTuber named Julian T who first put this together, this closing of the Strait of Hormuz, in this scene of the video, where this object that they're floating on that has a spear tip, like it's going to stick into something. This is a landmass that, when you compare the shape of it, it's very proximate to what you see in this landmass that protrudes at the Strait of Hormuz. And so obviously, you know, Islamic reference when you see the ones riding on it. And so it is closing. It is moving in the direction that it is going to close up the water in between it. So this closing of the Strait of Hormuz is also in the scene, or in this video, depicted by the repercussions of the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, because you see here, which the rough outline ties into the United States, you know, the Gulf of Mexico at the bottom, Florida on the right, and it's just very rough, but it shows oil being pumped away from the coast area. There's a lot of oil being pumped, but this area that depicts Florida also, because the video is very multi-layered, corresponds to a gas pump handle, you know, where you squeeze the lever and the gas comes out, and there's only a drop coming out, even though all the oil is being pumped. Because see what happens, and people think, well, America makes enough oil to be self-sufficient. But there's a lot of factors that goes into that. Because with the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, and despite Trump's rhetoric that, there'll be Navy escorts, that is not going to be successful. Iran is too big. That is their fight for their life. They're fighting an existential war right now, and they're not going to let anybody go through that strait. They said not one drop of oil is going through there without their permission. So the price of oil is going to go up. And so even though America produces a lot of oil, other nations do not. They import much more than the USA does. And so the price of oil will be bid up on a global scale, on a worldwide scale, and the private-owned producers of the oil that gets pumped out of the ground here in the USA will sell to the highest bidder, which will be these other nations because they need it, just like we need it. So the price will still go up, despite the fact that we produce a lot of oil. Plus, Biden, during his administration, he used a lot of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, the SPR, to keep the gas prices down. And Trump did not fill that back up. But it still has like 400 million barrels worth. So there would be even a lag from processing, pulling that oil out, processing that oil, getting it to where it needs to go. There's still going to be a lag. So the availability of oil is not just you say you're going to use a Strategic Petroleum Reserve and then all of a sudden you got oil everywhere. And that is a temporary solution anyway. Whereas this closing of the Strait of Hormuz is indefinite, because they're not going to be able to reopen that. They're not going to be able to pull ships through there. Despite Trump giving the vain promise of providing insurance, even though USA can't afford to do that, they're not going to be going through there. And if they try, Iran's going to keep lighting them up like they have been. They've lit up some oil tankers out there already. So the impact, you can go research on your own, the impact of the closing of the Strait of Hormuz is going to result in the lack of oil around the world. And even here in the United States, where we produce a lot of oil, export a lot of oil, there will still be high gas prices, and then eventually no gas in some areas, no diesel, and everything is shipped using fuel, whether by plane, by train, by semi-truck, by car. It's all petroleum based. And the diesel prices have already gone up. There's a place in Virginia that's already had diesel at over $6 a gallon. Over $6 a gallon. And that's crazy. That's unsustainable. They're gonna stop pulling those loads, or they're going to charge more fuel surcharge for getting the loads there, and that's going to be passed on to the consumer, and the consumer is going to have an increase in prices even while the oil is still available. So this is the scenario, and you can see here that Iran, the situation now is over Iran's ballistic missiles. So this depiction here of the Strait of Hormuz, this Islamic representation here, these people in these burqas are actually, also supposed to represent ballistic missiles. Look at the top of their head. That's to represent a ballistic missile. And the Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier is over there right now. And when the Abraham, this depiction of Abraham, because it's got a 5 on his chin, which Abraham Lincoln's on the $5 bill, comes out. The egghead character right there even says Abraham. And then right after that, it shows the planes going over and attacking the mosque. This video, I, Pet Goat 2. It's called Pet Goat 2 because on 9/11, while the planes were hitting the World Trade Towers, George Bush, who was president at that time, was sitting in this classroom, and they were reading a story called The Pet Goat. The Pet Goat.
Yes, the path to go. Fingers.
So right off the bat, when you see a video called Pet Goat 2, it's talking about the sequel or the next 9/11 or what comes after 9/11 or 9/11 Part 2, right? The next huge catastrophic event to befall the USA. Now, it came out in 2012, but it has a timeline, and you can see a progression into our modern day events. So right here, you see George Bush sitting in the classroom, right? It mimics what we saw in that scene where they were reading the Pet Goat 2. So it's alluding to 9/11, but giving you details regarding the sequel to 9/11. So it starts with George Bush. Now, George Bush stopped being president in 2008, early 2008. You know, that's when Obama became president. So Obama becomes president in 2008. So that's why you see the progression from George W. Bush to Obama. So this is moving into 2008. Now, Obama was president all the way up until the beginning of 2017. So it shows Bush, Obama. Now, Obama graduates. You see, he has the graduation cap on. Well, when the tassel flips, that means he's graduating. Okay. So he's leaving something that he was before and becoming something different. Now, this represents a transition here. So Obama's graduated from what he was during this previous time frame, which was president, and now it's something else. Okay. Now I'm gonna show you. It actually shows Trump in here, but right now I'm showing you there's a progression. So you have Bush, the same puppet, which is puppeted by this dragon, which we'll talk about that later, turns into Obama. So it's the same guy, right? The same guy, he just looks different. So the same puppet. The puppet is the president. So Bush, Obama graduates. So that takes us out of his presidency into 2017 because Obama, Trump was inaugurated. His inauguration day was January 20th, 2017. So it transitions. So it goes Bush, Obama graduates. Now he's changed. So this is out of Obama's presidency now. That Obama has graduated. And it shifts. The very next scene you see is this girl sitting here. But behind her, you see this figure, the only figure with this hair swoop. Now, follow me here because it shows Trump. For a long time, people made fun of Trump's hair swoop. But the way that this figure is sitting is very telling. You see how he's sitting kind of crouched over, legs open. His hands are in this diamond down type of position, pyramid down type of position. This is how Trump sits almost all the time. And I'm going to show you that. You could just Google it, just Google Trump sitting and you'll see results and you'll see him sitting in this same posture. Not only that, but above his head when it first shows the scene, because it kind of transitions, there's horns from, it's horns from this buck. But at first it doesn't show the buck. It just shows the head and then the horns coming out of the Trump figure's head. And if you really look at it, I'm not going to trace it out. But you can see, if you will, the rough presentation of the letters T, R, U, M, and P. P is a little bit speculative, but, it's an elongated M. But hopefully you can make that out. Definitely from Bush to Obama to this figure here, which is Trump. And it's right in the year. So you're moving right into 2017. And now this scene right here, it shows it's kind of multi-layered. This video is very multi-layered. But there are 12 of these gray figures, these ashen figures. 12 of them. And they represent the months of a calendar year. And the girl is sitting in the middle. Now, what happened in 2017, this is very pivotal in this video. You have to understand that they're using a Revelation 12 chapters 12 and chapters 13, along with other chapters, but primarily those two chapters as a theme. They're also giving you the spin, like, as they're doing it, so they can come back and point to it and say, see, this is what this meant, and this is how it happened, right? That's what they're trying to do. So this, as it moves into 2017, this depicts things that are in accordance with Trump's presidency. As it's showing Trump, okay, 2017, the 12 figures, the girl. Now, this might sound a little far-fetched, but as I show you these different, I don't have time in this particular video to go through all that right now. So I'm going to make a second video, or a third. This will be the third video in this series, where I'm going to show you what this means and how. All right, so this video, I, Pet Goat 2, refers to the sequel to 9/11. The sequel to 9/11, because on 9/11, while the planes were hitting, George Bush, who was president at that time, was sitting in a classroom while they were reading a story called The Pet Goat.
Get ready. The pet goat. Yes, the pet goat.
So The Pet Goat 2, or I, Pet Goat 2, and I'm going to show you this title. It's an anagram. I'm going to break it down for you. The I, and this is what I mean, this video is multi-layered. The I here, where it says I, Pet Goat 2, is actually also a capital H. And the reason why you can know that for a certainty is because when you see the blocks come down, you'll see that the consonants are red. The blocks that are consonants are red. The blocks that are vowels, A, E, I, O, U, the blocks that are vowels are white. And so when you see this I come down and it's a red block, well, that tells you it's a consonant, but it's flipped on its side. So it's also a capital H flipped on its side. And when you rearrange these blocks, I'm gonna deal with that later. Lord say the same. But I'm gonna deal with that later. We'll touch on that later. But I'm just showing you this video is multi-layered. So you go into this classroom. I already talked about the timeline, how we come up to 2017. It's dealing with Revelation 12 right now. And Revelation 12 begins by talking about this woman, a sign in heaven, the woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars around her head. She's travailing in birth. She's going to give birth to this child. Now, this shows this girl. There are 12 figures around her, right? So it's not exactly correlated to it, but one thing I want, you'll understand it in a minute. Just bear with me. But you got the girl, 12 figures around her. Now, it says she's clothed with the sun and the moon is under her feet. Now, look around her where she's sitting. Around her where she's sitting is a symbol for an eclipse. Right? It's got this gold circle. And you see this little gold dot beside it. Now, we know this is an eclipse when you look at the end of the video where it shows the logo Helio font, which Helio has to do with the sun. Your Helio refers to the sun. Now, you see Helio, the sign of the eclipse here, the corona around the sun, or the light around the sun if it's an annular eclipse, and the moon in the middle blocks out the light, right? So it makes this ring around it. That is representative of an eclipse. It has to do with the sun, eclipse. And this light appears above the eye, which it shouldn't because these are all capital letters, but the light appears above the eye and progresses towards the eclipse. We'll deal with all that later. But you see this got this dot around the eclipse. Boom, move back to the scene with a girl in a classroom. Got the sun, the sign of the eclipse under her with the little dot beside it as it's, kind of moving towards it. So this is an eclipse. So what does that mean? She's got the sun around her. The moon is under her feet. She's sitting on top of it. And she's got the 12 stars around her head, if you will. Revelation 12, 1 and 2, the woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, 12 stars around her head. Now, more than that, because we're dealing with 2017, you can see there are 12 figures. So it actually shows this as correlating to September and October, between September and October. And how do we know that? So, but when Bush is over here and he says can't get fooled again, which, you know, fool me once correlates to the first 9/11, can't get fooled again. He's talking about the sequel of 9/11. He does his hand these like devil symbol signs and scrolls across the months, right? He scrolls across the back row. He comes and he rests on the front row, right? So he's showing you the progression of the months. So the months proceed back row, come back to the front row, then go across. So you got the months to go all the way up to August on the back. The front row is the 9th, so that's September. Between September and October, the girl's sitting there. What does this mean? In 2017, there was an alleged, because it isn't the real interpretation of Revelation chapter 12, okay? But this is their spin on things. There was an alleged Revelation 12, 1 and 2 fulfillment on September 23rd, 2017. So that's why you have 2017, the girl sitting in between September and October. She is supposed to represent the fulfillment of Revelation 12, 1 and 2. Now, what's more than that, as I said, it's multi-layered. In Revelation 12, she's travailing to give birth. Well, the imagery is multi-layered, as I said, but she holds this apple in her lap, and I'll show you the timing of this later, how it's verified. But right now I'm dealing with the symbology. She's holding this apple in her lap. She drops it, and it rolls over here to where graduated Obama's foot is. Now remember, when the graduation occurred, it represents leaving his presidency. Same puppet is Bush that looks like Obama. Obama graduates into something else. This now represents Trump, okay, the one who's president after Obama. So go into that scene, and then you have the dragon is the one that's puppeting the president. Now, what does this mean? Remember, we got Revelation 12, 1 and 2 in this scene. Rolls over here, you see the LC on the ground. LC. Now, this video is very coded, but understand that 12, or L is the 12th letter of the alphabet. C is the 3rd letter of the alphabet, and sometimes they do this inversion type of symbology in their Masonic bullcrap way of explaining things. You see the black and white checkerboard floor and everything. So 12-3, if you will. We'll deal with other things later. So you go from Revelation 12:1, rolls over here to 12:3, hits graduated Obama's foot. Now, Obama is being puppeted by Draco. And this is what the Heliofon official website calls this dragon figure, because it's the same reptilian figure doing all this. It's Draco, or Draco, which is Latin for dragon. So it's literally the presidents are the agents of the dragon. This is the dragon's doing. Now, the dragon in Pet Goat 2, he's wanting to devour a child, right? And that is specifically what Revelation 12 says. You know, in Revelation 12:3, this dragon appears, and he wants to devour this child as soon as it's born, right? So you have this representation of a child being born, this heavenly sign alleged in Revelation 12, 1 and 2, announcing the birthing of this child. The dragon, who is represented by the presidents, waiting to kill this child. So as soon as this child comes out, as soon as it rolls over here to 12:3, so you go 12, 1 and 2 to 12:3, here's the dragon. He wants to kill the child. Now, in Pet Goat 2 or in Heliofont's website, when you go to the gallery, so this, and they even show the dragon looking at this supposed holy child who is praying, standing in front of him, waiting to kill him. I'll have to pick it up in the next video. All right, Pet Goat 2, continuing where I left off. On 9/11, while the planes were hitting, George Bush was sitting in the classroom while they were reading a story called The Pet Goat.
Yes.
So this is referring to the sequel to 9/11, and it shows you events that were planned out. They want you to think this is a prophetic video. It is a revelation of their plan. Right? It's not prophetic. It's showing you the plan. There's collusion at the highest levels. They're working to deceive the masses. This is the rollout of their plan. Now, where I left off at, I'm showing you that this figure, this Draco, this dragon figure, because Draco is Latin for dragon, is waiting to devour this child that's born in Revelation chapter 12. Right? The dragon appears, waiting to devour the child as soon as it's born. This Heliofont website, which is the official website behind, or associated with Icon Pet Goat 2, this shows this dragon figure looking at this egg wherein this child is. Now, it's a praying child because it's supposed to represent this holy child, supposed to be Jesus. That's what they're saying. He's looking at this child, waiting to devour it. That's what Revelation 12:4 says. And it literally says pray, P-R-E-Y, like he's waiting to devour this. This is his victim. So that's how you know he's waiting to devour it. The next time it shows this egg, it's the same egg, got the same markings on it. But the egg is now personified as a head. Okay, I call this figure Egghead. Hierophant calls him Ludovic. But now you have this Draco, this dragon figure. He's looking around. He sees the egg is open. Like he's been waiting to devour this child. So he looks and he sees it and he gets all happy. And now he goes in to devour it. This is what they're correlating to Revelation 12:4. The dragon, Draco, going in to devour the child that was inside this egg. Now you have the planes go over, they bomb the mosque. Out of the mosque, as the video progresses, comes this child, this whirling dervish child. He's going up to the sky. He's ascending to the sky. This is supposed to be representation of this child who was born, who ascends up to God and to his throne, because that's what Revelation 12:5 says. The child who is to rule all nations with a rod of iron, which they correlate to Jesus, Revelation 19. It's also correlated to the saints in Revelation chapter 2. But he's caught up unto God and to his throne. So that's why they show this child flying up to the sky, because now the devouring has happened, but he's going up to the sky. This is their presentation of Revelation 12:5. They're saying this child is Jesus, okay? And you know this because this same child that is ascending up, quote unquote, to God and to his throne here, if you look at this child, he's got the eye is damaged, the one eye is damaged. Look at his hair, look at how this child looks. Now, this child appeared earlier in the video in this scene, okay? In this scene where the woman is holding this child. The child is obviously, passed away. And Heliofont describes this scene, it labels this scene Pieta. Now, what is Pieta? Pieta refers to a depiction of Mary holding the deceased body of Jesus, right? Mary is holding the body of Jesus after his crucifixion. So Pieta represents the mother of Jesus holding his body after he's been unalived, right? So when it shows this woman, who we'll deal with who these people particularly are supposed to represent later, holding this child, and they call it Pieta, they're telling you this is supposed to be Jesus, right? You understand? So they show him, the dragon devouring the child as soon as it's born. This child that was allegedly prophesied by this Revelation 12 sign in 2017. The dragon does what it was trying to do. The child's caught up under God and to his throne. This child's Jesus. Okay, so that's how they say Jesus has now been introduced in the world, but taken out as a child, but transcends time and space, comes out in the past through time travel. It sounds retarded. Watch what happens. Watch what they tell you. Why do you think they've been pumping all this different timelines and multiverse? Why do you think they've been pumping all this into your brain for the past decade at least? Now it's just common. People talk about it commonly, like it's a real thing, when it ain't. It's just something you've been brainwashed to consider. So they say this is literally Jesus. You understand? They're saying this is literally Jesus. Now, we see this child, what was it, in the egg, right? And then the egg is open, but when it's personified as a head. Now, what's inside of a head? A brain, right? So you have an egg that is open. Inside of an egg is, in this video, the child. But inside of a head, which is now the egg, inside of a head is a brain. So that's why you see this dragon in the classroom scene waiting to devour a brain. Because it represents what's inside the egg, which is the child. You get what I'm saying? See how the video gives you the same thing in different symbolism? So you got the dragon waiting to devour a brain. Why? Because the brain is inside the head, but, you know, you got to understand what's inside this egg was that child. Dragon waiting to devour it. The reason why it's split in half, okay, you see how it's split right down the middle? Well, what rolls from this girl that's supposed to represent Revelation 12, 1 and 2 is split right down the middle. This is supposed to represent this child. Okay. And I know you say it's just an apple. Hey, it's all fits together, man. It's multi-layered. Rolls over here, split down the middle. Now, what happens is the lights go out. There's a spotlight that comes on this girl. There's a spotlight that stays with this rolling apple. Comes over here, it's split in half. This is it's just kind of mirrored in the opening scene, where inside of this concentration camp, which we'll deal with that, but this is a representative of a German concentration camp. You won't find these electric fences like this in any other location except these German concentration camps. There's been a lot of correlation with what's going on in this presidency with such imagery, right? Well, the lights are out. Okay, we'll talk about the actual events. You know, the cyber attack, the submarine attacks, stuff like that. We'll talk about that later. God say the same. But you have the spotlight come, and then this figure comes out of this hole, right? Which we're not going to deal with all the imagery, but he starts spinning his head in a circular motion like he's being hypnotized. Remember, the apple was spinning around. He's spinning his head in a circular motion while the spotlight's on him. And then, boom, he sounds the alarm. But understand, his head through this wooden circle like this is supposed to correlate to a guillotine. And I'll have to explain that to you later. But it is. So the spotlight goes in a circle, guillotine. He's got the 666 on his forehead, supposed to represent the Antichrist. They're basically telling you the Antichrist, i.e. in their version, is actually Jesus, is actually and then he transcends time and space and comes out of the abyss. And I'll just pick that up in the next video. I'll show you, they actually show you these things in this video. All right, picking up where I left off, this video I call Pet Goat 2. It's called Pet Goat 2 in relation to the sequel to 9/11, because on 9/11, while the planes were hitting the World Trade Towers, George Bush was sitting in the classroom and they were reading a story called The Pet Goat.
Get ready. The pet goat. Yes, the pet goat.
Now, after this apple gets cut in half, which I've talked about what that represents, this child that allegedly was prophesied to be born, they're actually saying a human child born in these last days, and they're correlating him to Jesus, as I explained before. So I explained that this represents the dragon devouring the child. And after this, okay, when you see this zooming out here from that scene, this is giving you the perspective of this disembodied or transcendent child coming from where it was devoured at and going into the afterlife. Okay, so as it's zooming out, you can see the destruction of America, the American flag ripped in half. We'll touch on some of this later on, but it goes ultimately into a cave. You can see it go into a cave. This transcendent child spirit now goes into this cave, which represents the afterlife. Immediately after it goes into this cave, you see an Anubis-headed boat, which Anubis is the ancient Egyptian quote-unquote god of the afterlife. So this Anubis-headed boat references something in the afterlife. And, you know, the video shows that the one riding in this boat is a Jesus figure, right? It's the Antichrist. They want you to believe it's actually Jesus. So that's how it progresses. Child gets devoured by a dragon, goes into the afterlife. Now, in the afterlife, is revealed as, you know, this Jesus figure. And you can see that at the end, this Jesus figure comes out of the cave, right? It went into the cave as the disembodied, you know, transcendent child figure, comes out of the cave as an adult version, if you will. It's not really an adult in their way of thinking. It's more of a transcendent, you know, evolved, if you will. Comes out of the cave in this same Anubis-headed boat, right? So it's a transcendent being who has at some point in the past been unalived and is now transcendent. But he comes back into our dimension / our timeline, because that's what they want you to think. And I'm going to show you that they present a transcendence beyond time and space here. Okay. When this figure comes out of this cave at the end, you can see that it is coming out of a cave that has this, you know, this devil's head above it. I call it the devil head cave. It comes out of the devil head cave at the end, right, into this dimension. Now, earlier in the video, it showed inside of the cave that this Jesus figure was coming out of a cave, but it was a different cave, okay? And I'm going to show you what that cave is. First of all, look behind this Jesus figure and you can see this church in the background, and you see this cave underneath it. Now, above this cave, you see this spiral type of a presentation here, you know, this crossed over spiral looking design. And above that, you see a circular pane glass window, which, you know, is probably a flower or a butterfly, because they use that type of imagery. So the spiral design with a circle pane glass window above the cave. The Devil's Head cave doesn't have that, but you can see that here in the church cave. Now, when you see this Jesus figure coming out of the cave here, what do you see above the cave? You see that spiral design, circular pane glass above it. So what is that telling you? He's not coming out of the Devil Head cave in this scene. He is going out of the church cave, okay? But in the end, when the Antichrist comes out of the Devil Head cave in the background, nobody's coming out of that church cave. Matter of fact, the church gets destroyed, and so nobody can come out of that church cave, okay? That cave is done. That exit has been exhausted, okay? So if anybody came out of that church cave, it had to be in the past, right? It had to be before this. Nobody's coming out right now. Nobody can come out in the future because it's destroyed. So it had to be in a historical context, right? And that's what they say, that Jesus in relation to the church came out in the past, okay? So when they show you this Jesus figure leaving this church cave, they're saying this was in the past. It's saying in relation to these end times, because in the end times, the Antichrist comes out of the devil head cave. And they have this dualistic type of a doctrine where they basically say, you know, there's a good version and an evil version, if you will, but it's the same being. So hopefully you understand what I'm saying here. This shows you a transcendence, and they show this Jesus figure like coming through the different dimensions, you know, in outer space, and basically impregnating a womb, and then this Jesus figure comes through that. It's like this circular continuation, perpetuation of this cycle. But hopefully you can see what I'm saying. They're presenting you a transcendent type of a doctrine, and that is going to tie into the Antichrist doctrine. All right, in the next video, I'm going to show you the anagram of the title screen and show you how it confirms what I've been telling you. So everything I've been saying is confirmed by this anagram here. You can see that the words are made out of blocks. The letters are blocks. And as they come down, they flip around. They're supposed to be like child blocks, but each one has a letter on it, right? Okay, so remember what we've been saying about Pieta, how they're saying that child is Jesus. Go watch the earlier videos if you haven't seen them. Well, here, when you flip the face value of it, I, pet go 2, you know, the one behind the video, supposedly given the prophetic vision, or perhaps the cartoon itself is related to, or is the equivalent to Pet Goat 2, or the sequel to 9/11, because on 9/11, when the planes were hitting, George Bush was sitting in a classroom. They were reading a story called The Pet Goat.
Yes, the Pet Goat.
So the sequel to 9/11, but this is an anagram, as I said. Well, Pieta is what the anagram relates to. It's Pieta got the sequel, or got the guillotine, because this is also related to a guillotine. It actually shows you this in 2 ways, just really quickly. You can see the slant highlighted, you know, barbed wire line, which makes the angle of the razor. Or in the next scene, when the puppeteer's handle goes in front of it, it makes the razor again, but this time it's red, right? It's been, you know, kind of giving you this imagery like it's been used. So it's supposed to be a guillotine. So got the guillotine, comma, Pieta, or, you know, something like that. Pieta, comma, got a sequel. You get it? The odds of it being Pieta, and they're relating that to Pieta, it just shows you what I'm saying. It's Pieta part 2, you know, got Pieta 2, or something of that nature. But there's also a secondary anagram, because the letters turned gold, okay? The letters turned gold. They were originally white and red, depending on if they were a vowel or a consonant. And I talked about how when the blocks fall, you can initially see that the vowels are all white, the consonants are all red blocks, except for the I. The capital I is a red block, and that's telling you that it, you know, because the video has a lot of multi-layered imagery. It's telling you that the red block is a consonant, so it can also be flipped on its side and taken as an H, okay? That's evident. The white blocks are vowels. The red blocks are consonants. So this is a capital H flipped on its side according to that standard. So the blocks don't stay white and red, though. They turn gold. All the letters turn gold as it transitions into this other scene here. Now, what's interesting, now you have all these letters in gold, but you have the introduction of 2 additional letters in gold in the ring that is present, okay? It looks like a dollar symbol. It's really not. It can represent that, but it's a serpent. You can see the eye of the serpent with a capital I or a pole behind it. Right? It's multi-layered. It has different references, but right now we're just dealing with an anagram. So you have the capital H on its side, right? And you also have the introduction of a capital I, the I behind the S, and the capital S, or, they could be lowercase, whatever. The I and S and the H. And since rotating the blocks is already validated in their anagram, then you can flip the P, and that turns it into a lowercase d. Now, when you put all that together, as we were saying, we showed before, Revelation 12:4, the dragon, was waiting to devour the child, right? Well, what does this say? This ate God, guillotine. So this is evident. I'm showing you like it's heavily coded information. It affirms what I've been saying, which is evident on its own merit. They have a plan here. This is a depiction of Revelation 12. They're rolling it out. This is showing you the Antichrist doctrine ahead of time.